Hey guys, back again with another aircraft kit this week. This time we're going to be looking at Kinetic's 1/48 scale F-16A MLU kit. Now, one thing I want to say right out of the gate is I've built some of Hasegawa's F-16s in the past, and I want to say I do like what Kinetic has done as far as labeling their kits. One issue with a lot of the older Hasegawa kits is that they just say, oh, this is an A, this is a C, and so on. They don't give you either the block numbering or, in this case, that it's the upgraded MLU. So that is a big plus, as it does allow you to know, okay, I want to build this particular type of F-16, which means I'm going to need this kit. So that out of the way, let's open it on up and take a look. Okay. Decals aside. Okay. Now, right out of the gate, with this first sprue, we can see one of the major differences between the Kinetic and the Hasegawa kit, in that with the Kinetic, they have the wings already molded and attached. With the Hasegawa kit, there's a separate piece that you then attach to the main fuselage. Now, with the Kinetic kit, major issue I have is right here with this little protrusion. That's not actually supposed to be there. That is a molded in item that I'm going to assume they did for casting purposes. And that's going to be an absolute bear to try and clean up. So that is a fairly major fault against the Kinetic. I do like, however, that they include the static wicks. That's a nice inclusion. You don't typically see that just because they're small and easily broken parts. So the fact that Kinetic includes those is a nice plus. Moving on to the cockpit tub, detail, no, it's acceptable. It's not the worst, not the best. Overall, not a bad inclusion. Give you a quick glance at some detailing on the surface here. I'll go in more depth that later. I'll skip to the clear parts since they're next up. Again, no real complaints. Surprisingly, no real mold lines down the middle, so that's very nice. On that, clear and easily visible through. I also like that there is a fair bit of detailing along them, so once you get them masked, they should look really nice. You also have a multitude of other clear parts for the various lights and heads-up displays. A lot of combinations included here. Moving on, we start get into some of the engine parts as well as the main gears. Now, another difference between the Kinetic and the Hasegawa is that the Kinetic has broken up the individual engine pedals for the exhaust into sub-assemblies. This is a good and bad thing. Really is going to come down to how detailed you want to go. Obviously, if you want to really get all the details painted out, I think this will probably be the easier route to go. Alternatively, if you just want to do it quick, the Hasegawa would be a better route. Beyond this, you also get the compressor and turbine sections, so you can detail those up. We also have our inlet trunking, which is more than acceptable. Some of it will be visible, some will not. Also have our small mouth, since this is an A, and some of the gear doors. Now, one issue I have noticed on the Kinetic kit is there's a fair amount of ejector pin marks on some of these parts. For the most part, they're not that bad. they're not really noticeable. You can probably get away with not cleaning them up. Where you do encounter the issue is here on the main gear, right in this area. There is some detail there that has been destroyed. Now, is it something I'm going to say you have to go and fix? Not really. It's small enough and, easily not noticeable. Granted, you'll know it's there, so that may bug you. It's really going to come down to, okay, how much time do you want to invest in this? Alternatively, you could just go aftermarket route as well. So that's going to be an individual choice. But overall, that's the one complaint I have as a sort of general theme with this is it does have some ejector pin marking that does get in the way of some details. Now, as I mentioned before, surface detailing on this is overall good. One thing I do like is that they do give us some options for two different styles of the back spine where the vertical stab connects. And this does simplify which version you're in specific build, as there is some differentiation between the different NATO countries. So that does mean different access panels. So having two options with the correct panel lining for them is a nice inclusion. I give it to Kinetic. They've done a good job giving you options, if nothing else. And again, much the same with the lower fuselage, which you'll obviously build up as you go. Moving on, we now get into more of the control surfaces, detail parts, as well as the main gear bay, nose cone, and some of the drop tanks. We also get several different versions of the instrument panel. To the best of my knowledge, you've got A, which I believe is this one, C, this one, and I want to say this one's for the EF. Don't quote me on that. I haven't been able to find any good reference photos to show the cockpit on the EF version of the F-16. To definitively say that, but it would make sense. But the fact that you get all that right out of the gate, that's a nice inclusion. So if you wanted to, you could theoretically do some tweaking and build different versions just with kits parts as they stand. Maybe do a couple of what ifs. No, you've got options there. That's a definite nice inclusion. As I mentioned, we've got obviously our flaps, vertical rudder control. Again, like the fact they include static wicks. Overall, I've got nothing but praise for details they're including. Beyond that, they do pack a lot of options in this kit. Only thing I would say, if I could find a fault, I do think some of the parts are a little over-engineered. So instead of doing just one part, you've got several. Now, the next couple of sprues are duplicates. First off being the weapon sprue, which is an advantage with this kit as opposed to Hasegawa in that you get everything you need to arm it right out of the box. You don't need to get anything else. So that is a nice inclusion. And you do get a fairly comprehensive loadout from air-to-air and air-to-ground. So I would say overall, if you've looked at even the Hasegawa weapon sets, I would call it roughly comparable. Obviously, there are minor detail differences as far as the part breakdowns, and I'm not going to go that deep into it, but you do get a fairly comprehensive loadout. Continuing on, we've got some more drop tanks. We also have our pylons, ejection seat, and a couple different style of the main gear wheels. Again, they give you a lot of options in this kit, and they're smartly done options. Now, last sprue is our different style of jamming pods and targeting pods. Again, they really tried to cover as many bases as they could with this kit. Now, give me a second to get the sprues back in the box, and we'll move on to decals and instructions. Okay, so decals are split up between two sheets. This first sheet containing all of the weapon decals, which I gotta say are very bright, clear, and in really good register. Also like the inclusion of some of the metallic details. I mean, very good inclusion. No complaints there. Second sheet contains our stencil data, as well as several different NATO options. Again, a lot of detail, a lot of different options, and they even include some of the alternates for depending on the individual paint scheme you're going with. And fantastic inclusion there. Now, moving on to the instructions sheet. This is where I do think a lot of differences almost immediately come apparent, as this is a significantly more complicated build sequencing than the Hasegawa's. Thankfully, Kinetic does a very good job of pointing out, okay, where the difference is depending on the individual nation's F-16s are, so you know which part to use with which kit. Obviously, this does mean you're going to have to, right out of the gate, decide on which version you're going to build, because there is actually a significant difference between them in terms of panels, vents, all that. But thankfully, the instructions do a good job of pointing this out, but it's definitely one you don't want to skip around on. As I said, this is a fairly complicated build sequence, and though it does all logical steps, building up the internals before building up the rest of the fuselage, it's still one you're going to want to take your time, go slow, and definitely not jump around, because that's probably going to get you in trouble quick. Now, another point, again, as I mentioned, with the tail assembly for the, you're given 3 different options depending on which countries, as each of them uses a little different system. Some have parachutes for assistance, cutting down landing distance, other equipment, and so on. So again, make sure you're picking out which one you need for the individual country you're building. After that, though, it's straight into the armament. Again, check your references. They do give you a nice loadout key. And yeah, I mean, they do a really good job of trying to inform you on what all you need and how to do it. But again, it's just, there's a lot of little gotcha areas, so just make sure you take your time and go slow. Then move on to the paint keys. Primarily is given in MIG colors, but they do have a conversion sheet at the front, as well as giving you the individual unit markings and their individual camouflage schemes. So, overall, while I do think it is, in a vacuum, a really great kit, I think the question really comes down to, okay, how invested are you in the F-16? If you just want to build an F-16, then I would say you can probably find some version of the Hasegawa kit, more than likely secondhand, for fairly cheap, at most $20. And even if you do have to go out and buy one of the weapon sets, you're still going to be in it for less than this kit. This kit typically runs in the $60 range. However, if you're looking to build a specific version, I cannot recommend the Kinetic kit more than I can really put to words. They've done a really great job. They've made sure you know exactly what you need, where you need it, and with the fact that they include on the box which version it is specifically, will make it a lot easier for you to figure out which one you need to get. I do hope to get some more of these in the future, as they are just really good little kits. So that was a look at Kinetic's 1/48 scale F16A MLU upgrade. Fantastic kit, cannot recommend it enough. So until next time.